in Albany, and we're joined by the voice of the Jets, Bob Wischusen. Good morning, Bob.
Hey, guys. How are you?
I'm good, Bob. Thanks for a few minutes. Appreciate it. Let's just start with the generic question here, but were you surprised at this decision? I know that right after the game, the head coach, Todd Bowles, did say he was sticking with Fitz and changed his mind. Are you surprised at the decision to start Geno?
Mildly. I'm not surprised that if he was going to make a change, he went to Geno. I think he's probably the only guy right now that he has the option to go to. But I think they're looking at this as, the season's not over yet, and they're just looking for a spark. And how many places on a 53-man roster can you make a seismic changing, move? Well, quarterback's really the only one. I mean, it barely registers on the Richter scale if you replace any other player on the team. So this is really all they have that, the only major button that they can push. And they're going to give Geno a chance.
Yeah. How do you think what do the players feel about the change at quarterback?
Well, I don't think there's a universal answer to that question. It's 45 individual guys. There are probably guys in there that are friends of Geno that are happy that he's getting another opportunity. There are guys in there that I know are very, very loyal to Ryan Fitzpatrick that are disappointed that this is the way it's gone. But I think universally in that locker room, they understand that, all of the strengths that they had at their disposal last year offensively, none of those things have been strengths so far this year. And, you probably can't put it all on Eric Decker's injury as to why their offensive production has fallen off. I mean, it's based, mostly on turnovers, especially in the red zone, where, they've been arguably the most frustrating team in the NFL to watch this season. A lot of times when you make a quarterback change, it's because your team can't even make a first down. You're San Francisco, you've got Blaine Gabbert, and he literally can't complete a pass. And so you feel like, all right, well, we have to give Colin Kaepernick his job back. The Jets going into the game Monday night, and I have to check the numbers, I haven't checked them this week, but going into the Cardinal game, they were tied third in the NFL for most red zone opportunities. They had 20 chances offensively in the red zone through the first, 5 games of the season. So they're averaging 4 trips a game inside the other team's 20-yard line. And that's with the defense not taking the ball away at all.
Yeah. So,
between the 20s, Ryan Fitzpatrick was moving the offense before Monday night. Now, Monday night obviously was brutal. I mean, they had, I don't know what it was, 6 3-and-outs and 1 4-and-out. I mean, they couldn't, they couldn't get a first down on Monday night. And then the real killer was when he threw the interception down in the end zone, which I think is the 4th or 5th red zone turnover he's had this year, where last year he had 1, and the 1 came in the last game of the season against Buffalo. So, normally you change the quarterback when your offense can't function, when they can't move the ball. And that hasn't been the case with them. They've moved the ball. They've been in the other team's red zone. It's just last year when they were in the red zone, they scored touchdowns. And this year they're kicking field goals and turning it over. And that's how you end up 1-5.
Talking with Bob Wischusen, voice of the Jets. How much input do you think the owner had in this decision, if any?
Oh, I have no idea. I wouldn't think a lot. I mean, I think that, he pretty much leaves his football people to do their jobs. And obviously he wants to be informed and wants to be in the loop of what they're doing. But I mean, I don't think he's the type of owner in any way, shape, or form that calls up the head coach and says, I want to see Geno Smith. I mean, I think that, he'll call up the head coach and say, what are you thinking? And the head coach will, not make a decision even based on that. But, Todd Bowles said, I need to sit with my coaching staff. That's why he said he didn't announce anything after the game was over on Monday, that you're not going to go into a press conference after the game is over and say, I'm making a quarterback change before the players even have their uniforms off in the locker room, and now the media trots in, runs up to Ryan Fitzpatrick and says, hey, you just got benched. What do you think about that? So, I mean, you basically say it's the status quo until you have a chance to meet with your coaches, which you did on Tuesday, and then after those meetings, the move was decided upon. So I don't think this was an owner's decision at all. I think this is the coaching staff looking for answers because they haven't had any so far this year.
How do you think Gino's going to do, Bob?
Again, hard to tell. I mean, the samples, we haven't seen him in a year and a half other than in a couple of relief appearances. He never had a wideout as talented as Brandon Marshall to throw to, but he also is now without Eric Decker. And when he was a rookie, he had Eric Decker. So he had a chance, or second year had a chance to throw to Eric Decker, but didn't have Brandon Marshall. So, I mean, he's still not going to be a quarterback that's operating with the full complement of weapons for the rest of this season. But having said that, I mean, I don't think there's a major organizational push to have Geno Smith back next year. He's a free agent after this season. Right. So this, I think, for him is a chance to prove to the rest of the NFL that he can still do this. The two guys on their roster that I think they believe could factor into their future heavily are Bryce Petty and Christian Hackenberg. So we'll see at some point if we see either of those two guys this season. I would think it would be Petty that you would see first, and I would think that, yes, there's a very good chance that at some point they'll give him a chance to play.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also think the Jets, Bob, are still under the mindset that this season's not over yet, right? That Geno's a spark, and yeah, they're 1-5, but sitting at 1-5 with the schedule they have coming up, maybe they can win some games. That this season is not completely lost. Do you think that's what they're thinking?
Well, you have to think that way. I mean, how could you possibly say anything else to your team? I mean, they've got, 2/3 of their season left to go. So, yes, I mean, I absolutely think that's what they're thinking. They also are no dummies. I mean, they see the first 6 games that they had to play. They had the hardest schedule in the NFL in the first 6 weeks. Now, at least statistically or theoretically, they've got the easiest schedule in the NFL the rest of the way. Based on how they've played, it's hard to see that that's going to translate to some 8 or 9 game winning streak. Right. But of course, they have to approach it that way. How could they approach it any other way?
Right. The only thing now is if they lose a couple of more games, then they may go, okay, we got to make a move here from Geno, and let's see what, as you said, Bryce Petty can do for the rest of the season. Now we got to look at the future.
And nobody replaces a quarterback that's winning games, or very rarely does that happen. I mean, maybe you'll have that situation in Dallas, but nobody replaces a quarterback, certainly unless you have a legendary or established 5 to 10 year franchise quarterback like a Tony Romo coming off of injury, and that creates a whole different debate. But yes, I mean, if Geno Smith goes out there and wins, 4 of the next 5 games, and all of a sudden now they're a game or two within 500, theoretically, Thanksgiving moving towards December, they're still playing games that matter. How can you go into a locker room that has guys in there like Matt Forte and Nick Mangold and Brandon Marshall and David Harris and Darrelle Revis and so on and so forth, all of these guys that certainly are at the very least on the other side of the prime of their career, and say, you know what, guys, I know we're within a game or two of the playoffs with 6 games to go or 5 games to go, but we're flushing that. I mean, we're going to sit the quarterback that won 4 of these 5 games, and we're going to find out what we've got, for our future. We're going to play Bryce Petty. So, yes, I mean, I think that when Bryce Petty gets a chance to play this year is completely dependent upon what happens results-wise over the next several weeks. And if Geno goes out there, and, I mean, you think about at least their next 4 games before they've got a bye, before they've got a couple games to the Patriots, another game with the Bills at the end of the season still on the horizon. They have a game home against Baltimore this week, and Joe Flacco's banged up, as is many of their top players. Then they go on the road to Cleveland, they go on the road to Miami, and they host the Rams. So out of those 4 games, they obviously could win them all. Now, they haven't played well enough to give you a belief that they will all of a sudden rip off a 4-game winning streak against anyone. But they could win all 4 of those games. Well, you win all 4 of those games, now you're 5-5, at the bye. And that's probably where a lot of people thought they might be, even if they played okay through their first 6 games. So you're 500 at your bye week with 6 games to go. You're in it. And so that I would assume would weigh very heavily in their decision-making as to how they will approach the end of the season. Now they go 2-2, and they've already got 7 losses, and they're 3-7, and they're 4 games behind the wild card spot. Well, then maybe you see Bryce Petty, but we'll see what happens.
Hey, Bob, Zach By joining Roger in studio. Obviously, the Jets' problems this year go well beyond the quarterback. In your opinion, and you watch every single snap of the season, what other phase of the game for the New York Jets needs to raise their level the most if they are going to pick up some of those victories?
Well, I think the defensive line, I think, and they would admit that. Muhammad Wilkerson even said after, I don't know, I think it was after the Seattle game, or I'm not sure which game, but it was recent. He was asked how he's played this year, and he said, like blank, like a four-letter word. So, I think he looks collectively, you've got, Sheldon Richardson. Leonard Williams, I think, has been very, very good. But Sheldon Richardson, Muhammad Wilkerson probably have not had the impact that either they or the Jets hoped that they would have. This was supposed to be a change the line of scrimmage, dominate that area of the game type of a defensive line. And before Monday night, when David Johnson ran for 100 yards against them, they had not given up 100 yards to another team so far this season, much less an individual rusher. So they had stopped the run, but they had not pressured the quarterback and kind of not owned the tackle box without having to blitz the way that I know they thought they should be able to do. So to me, if there's one unit on this team that absolutely has the ability to flip a switch and collectively become a difference-making unit, that's the group.
Yeah.
And if their defensive line plays like monsters the next 6 weeks or so, well, that changes the game. That's where quarterbacks hurry throws and you get interceptions. That's where a quarterback gets hit and the ball pops out and someone scoops and scores. So much, I think, of the takeaways that they're missing on defense right now trickle back to the fact that the defensive line just isn't changing a line of scrimmage and affecting the quarterback the way that they need to. If they start to do that, then this defense, I think, has a chance to look like the defense we all thought it would be, and they just haven't been yet.
Yeah, 100% in agreement there. I think that's the one area outside of the quarterback and all that defensive line we all thought would be really good coming into this season, and they need to play better, and they have the talent to do it. I think if they turn that up a notch, it certainly could help the entire football team. Bob, I always appreciate a few minutes. Do a great job on the play-by-play for the Jets, and we carry Jets football right here on 104.5 The Team, and we'll be back in touch. Have a great call on Sunday.
Great, thanks.
Thank you, Bob. Bob Wischusen. It's a 1:00 kick against the Ravens.